The presidential election is now just 6 months away, and with the presumptive nominees for each party decided, Republican attention has now turned to who Donald Trump will pick as his running mate. Among those in the conversation, Senators Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, and Tim Scott, as well as House GOP Conference Chair Elise Stefanik, all of whom were at Trump's retreat at Mar-a-Lago this weekend. Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett joins me now. So, Major, how do you see that? This is an abnormal vice presidential process. How do you see it?
Well, it's abnormal on a couple of levels, John. One, the former vice president to President Trump is not endorsing him. That's brand new. Mike Pence is not on board. It wouldn't be considered this time, and the schism there is important about the schism within the Republican Party. This process is also different because in 2016, when then candidate nominee Trump made this decision, it was basically between three: Mike Pence, Chris Christie, believe it or not, or Newt Gingrich. Only one of those remains in the Trump orbit, Newt Gingrich. And it sort of explains the difficulties that Trump finds in dealing with the Republican Party that he used to try to want to lead in 2016 and where it is now. He's much solidly in the lead of a Trumpist Republican Party, something he had not even begun to consolidate in 2016. In 2016, he looked to Mike Pence. Why? Because he thought Mike Pence could help him with his legislative agenda and his knowledge of Washington. Trump no longer wants that, no longer is interested in that. What Trump wants is a subservient, comparatively quiet loyalist as vice president. And so those who were there at Mar-a-Lago want to fit into that very specific mold. And to do so, they will have to be things most politicians are unaccustomed to being: silent, subservient, and fiercely loyal. And that's what Trump's going to demand. Speaking
of fitting into molds, I've been wanting to talk to you about the Time magazine article in which Trump sketched out his second-term vision. You are a student of the Trump boasts about things that don't come to pass, and yet the seriousness with which you have to take the things that he does say, that kind of how do you see the promises he made for a second term in terms of policy in that Time article, or just more broadly?
I take the intentions very seriously, John. In 2016, then candidate Trump had some general impressions about what he wanted to do if he were to win the presidency. Having won the presidency, seen the presidency, and feeling more often than not frustrated even by those he chose to work closest with him, it goes back to this idea of loyalty and why that is paramount in Trump's interest. Loyalty, absolute fidelity to his plans, because he believes once plans are articulated, if you have loyalists, you are better positioned to carry them out. He's now made very clear what his intentions are across a wide array of policy choices, and he wants the loyalists around him to help him carry that out. As I mentioned earlier, in contrast to 2016, when the range of options for vice president didn't have a lot of loyalists and didn't have a Trumpist Republican Party beneath him, he has that now. So he has the intentions and the loyalists to call upon to try to make them more real. I take them very seriously, John.
As a final question, we're 6 months out from Election Day. Give us your viewer's guide, or the steps along the way from now until then. And is it different than what you and I would have expected in terms of the way the ball would bounce when we started out some years ago?
John, we have a memory problem in our country right now. We have almost completely, or chose to forget, COVID. The 2020 presidential campaign was unlike any you or I had ever experienced, any that any Americans living had ever experienced. Essentially, a campaign that did not exist in a tactile sense. It wasn't an active national thing. We mostly watched it through our television sets entirely because nothing was actually engaged. We're going to have the first campaign since 2016 that is national and fully engaged. We're going to have a rematch, which is unusual in American presidential politics. And we have a Trump-Biden dynamic that will only get more fierce, ferocious, negative, and ugly in each month to come.
Major Garrett in Washington. It's great to see you again out there, Major. Thank you.